and welcome back to the Cruel Corner. We're here once again in this wonderful ranty corner for all things Formula E. The Berlin doubleheader has come to a close, and we're talking about race 1, of course, this time around. So what happened in the first venture around the new circuit, the newly configured circuit at the Tempelhof Airport? It must be said, it was providing some great excitement and battles, but Berlin usually does anyway. A couple of tight and twisty sections that have been added in that caused a little bit of drama and chaos, but that's just the way Formula is these days. And it was very difficult to rate what drivers did what in the end, because some of them were so unlucky, others caused their own misfortune. But I think I've got an even balance out based on where they qualified, how the race went overall. Some sympathies given some ways to some drivers, others not so much. So if you've never seen this series before, I award the drivers out a maximum of 10 points based on their overall race weekend's performance, and I go all the way down to 0 if they have a particularly bad one. Take a look out for bonus points. They're sometimes an offer of some drivers that do something extra special during a race, and on the rare occasion I do award minus points to those drivers that do something extra special, but for all the wrong reasons. Let's take a look at the current Cruel Corner standings then going into this episode. It's on the screen now for you to take a look at. Have a look and see where your favourite driver is, and as I'm sure you're already aware, there's going to be a lot of driver changes in this episode. So unfortunately the likes of Sebastian Buemi, Nick De Vries, Robin Freitz, etc. will be taking a back seat from scoring any points in these next 2 episodes, and their replacements will be scoring on their behalf in some ways. They'll be scoring their own points, so they'll be taking their place in the leaderboard just for a couple of rounds at least. So makes things a little bit messy and complicated, but we knew this day was coming. It's just one of those things, unfortunately. But see where your favourite driver is, and based on this weekend overall, if they did take part in the race, where do you reckon they're going to end up? So without further ado then, let's kick things off with the race winner then, shall we? Nick Cassidy. Bloody hell, Nick. I mean, he's been known for being a master of the Formula E, this Gen 3 era, hasn't he? But I think this really just shows it off, doesn't it? Qualified himself inside the top 10 in the Jaguar, that's fair enough, I think, based on how chaotic and frantic qualifying can be these days, you know. I think 9th is a respectable place to qualify. It puts yourself in position for some solid points, doesn't it? And in the race itself, he dropped back initially to around that 13th, 14th area, climbed his way back up onto the cusp of the points again. And then after that full course yellow incident for Joel Erikson stopping on track, which then became a full safety car, next thing I noticed, he was last. He was last of the runners. I'm like, well, how the hell's that happened? And I still don't know to this day. And I'm quite late recording this, so I don't know what happened there. If anyone knows, please let me know, because I'm genuinely baffled. But he worked his way all the way from the back then, picking him away, chipping away. And he worked his way up to the front. Some fantastic overtakes around the outside, up the inside. Cars were saving energy on the inside of an hairpin, so he went, all right, I'll just freewheel around the outside you then, thank you very much. And he did a really, really good job to gain the net lead. And then once he was in the lead, he pulled the pin. He was away and gone, and there were no one stopping him from there, was there? So absolutely fantastic, fantastic effort. Nick Cassidy is having a fantastic season this season, and this is just the proof of it. Qualifies himself in a solid, respectable place. He'd have probably wanted more from qualifying. Initially dropped back, saving energy. Gained his few places back into the points, tumbled away for no apparent reason. Like I said, I don't know what happened at all there, but then worked his way back from the back of the grid into the victory positions. So yeah, there's a lot of drivers that did have misfortunes in the race, but back to front is a fantastic effort. Of course, it's going to be 12 points to Nick Cassidy. He's getting 2 bonus points for that, because wow, oh wow, oh wow, he deserved it, didn't he? Great effort, really well done, Nick. Fantastic job. 12 points to you. Finishing in 2nd place after qualifying in P3, it is, of course, Jean-Eric Vern. What a fantastic effort Jean-Eric Vern is having. This last few rounds has been going really well for him, hasn't it? It must be said. He's really found his feet. The DS Penske squad seems to be doing a lot better now as well. Not just in one lap pace, but also in overall race pace as well. Jean-Eric Vern drove really, really well. He didn't get himself into any drama, trouble or bother, which a lot of other cars around him and teams around him did do. He was lucky in some aspects, but in others he put himself in those positions and made his own luck. He drove really, really well. P3 in qualifying, just pipped to a front row start by his teammate, but I'm not holding that against him at all. And in the race itself, just stayed in that top half of the field all the race through. I think the lowest he was about 6th or 7th at one point, but that was just to save energy in the pack, and then he worked his way back up through the fields again. It was chaotic stuff. It's been difficult to judge this one. I've watched the race twice now. Fully, no fast forwards, no nothing. I've watched it fully twice, and I still cannot work out how some of these drivers got where they were. But one thing was for certain, Jean-Eric Vern was at the front the entirety of that race. He did really, really well. So Jean-Eric Vern, it's a perfect 10 to him for that. Cannot fault a thing. That was a great effort, great drive, and yeah, he deserves a perfect 10. There's nothing to be said about that other than faultless. 10 to Jean-Eric Vern. Third place, we come to Oliver Rowland, another one of those hard chargers up through the pack. Yeah, some luck went his way in aspects, some didn't. He ended up with a bit of wing damage, but it didn't really matter in the end. He managed to keep going. But yeah, qualified in P15. His teammate was alongside him in P16, so was that the overall pace of the Nissan? Based on that, I would say yes. The McLarens as well, of course, the same Nissan powertrain. So yeah, you know, they were all in that sort of area, weren't they, unfortunately? But the race itself, once again, he didn't look to be getting really anywhere in the first half of it, but once again, after that late safety car period, he made his way through the field massively. He was just saving energy, and then he just deployed it all towards the latter stages of the race, got himself into that top 6 position, and I do feel that even though this peloton is basically involving every single driver up and down the field, for the most part, I mean, Nick Cassidy once again proved that this is wrong and incorrect, but for the most part, I feel if you're not inside that top 6, top 7 window throughout most of the race, it's when you're not going to have that ability to actually win the overall race. I mean, I know, like I said, Nick Cassidy's already not proving my point, but Oliver Rowland managed to get himself inside the crucial positions at the crucial stages. It's like he knows when he can deploy the energy, he knows when to save, and he knows how far back he has to drop or how far forward he has to climb to be able to deploy the energy at the right times and make sure he's in a position to get in those podium spots towards the end of the race when he's got that efficiency to go for it. So yeah, Oliver Rowland, absolutely perfect. He has been sublime this season, hasn't he? Podium after podium after podium. I mean, you know, had it not been for that failure with the miscalculation a couple of rounds ago of the energy usage, you know, where could he have been in this championship? He could have been leading it. There were 25 points on the table there, but as it was, it is once again another podium position for Oliver Rowland. A rejuvenated Oliver Rowland. It's great to see. And he's getting 9 points for that. Fantastic effort. As mentioned, he's doing a stunning job in that Nissan, and he deserves all the credit he is getting. Oliver Rowland, 9 points to him. A fantastic, fantastic job. Securing 4th place, we come to Mitch Evans, another one that sort of made his way through the pack, qualified himself P10, and that was a good effort, that, by Mitch, to get himself into P4 in the end. It's just a lottery at times, isn't it? It really is, but some drivers do make their own luck, it must be said. But yeah, overall for Mitch Evans, not as impressive as his teammate, of course, didn't get his way all the way up through the field again after issues. You know, Mitch was very much inside that top 6 area throughout most of the race once he got himself settled down, and drove really well to secure some solid points for the team and for himself as well in the driver's standings. But yeah, Nick Cassidy just seems to have the edge on him. It's been a weird season this season. Things really haven't gone Mitch's way, and some of it has been his own doing. But this weekend around, I think it was just right place, right time. I mean, the attack modes and stuff, I mean, bloody hell, how can I even talk about them? Like, it was just frantic, frenetic, and I just don't know. But yeah, either way, some obviously strategic games in play as well. But yeah, nonetheless, Mitch Evans, it's going to be 8.5 to him for that. I think that's a fair score, a solid effort, a solid drive, inside the top 10 for qualifying, and the race inside the top 5. Can't say much fairer than that. 8.5 to Mitch Evans. Next up, securing P5, we come to Pascal Verline. After qualifying himself inside the top 5, I believe, wasn't he? Was he P5, P6? I think he was P6, actually, wasn't he? But nonetheless, good effort by Pascal Verline. Really, really good job. I mean, at one stage, it looked like the Porsches were going to do what they had last time out, which is a 2x2 formation. You know, the Jaguars did it, and the Porsches did it ahead as well at Monaco. But this time around, there were 2x2 to start with after the safety car period. but then it just sort of ebbed and flowed away from him. You still had the likes of Moraira fighting him. You had the likes of Mitch Evans fighting. Vern certainly wasn't going away. And yeah, I think it was the whole attack mode scenario with those, which is why it didn't play out, I think, if I remember rightly anyway. But yeah, you know, overall, he did okay, didn't he? You know, again, inside the top 10 in qualifying, finished inside the top 5 in the race. It's a good effort, has to be commended. Not really quite sure where it all went wrong for him, but there were a 2x2 formation in 1-2 at the time, so maybe there was more ability to play a team game there that didn't quite play off like it could do at Monaco. Who knows? But it's going to be a solid 7 to Pascal Verline for that. I think it's a good score. There was maybe opportunity for a podium there that went begging. And, of course, loses out to his rivals in the championship standings overall. But a solid weekend for Porsche, which is what they needed. So 7 to Pascal Verline. Finishing just behind his teammate is, of course, Antonio Felix da Costa. Well done to Antonio. It's going to be short and sweet for da Costa. He's getting the same as Pascal Verline. A solid 7. Qualified himself inside the top 10 once again. And in the race itself, stayed with his teammate. As mentioned, they were 1-2 for a little while, and I thought this is where the games were going to be played. This is where the strategy was going to come in, as one hold back and the other one goes forward. But there was just like a swarm of bees around everyone at every time, wasn't there? 4-5 wide, and it was crazy. It really was. Calling a full course yellow when they're 4 wide. It's like, how do you depict all of that? Come on. Felt sorry for Scott Elkins in that situation. But yeah, you know, da Costa overall, I think he's been really, really good so far this season. Okay, had a difficult start to the year, but recovered his way through, and since he had that win took off him, he has been rejuvenated. Okay, some things haven't gone his way, but he is really proving to be the solid driver that we know of him. We know he's a Formula E champion. We know he can do it. It's like he's finally adapted to Porsche with the Gen 3 era, and he's really finding his feet and finding his comfort. And I hope it's going to be a good result for him tomorrow. But for now, da Costa, a solid 7 to him. Next up, we come to Stuffle Van Den in the second of the DS Penske's. Van Den this weekend qualified himself in second place, which is a stunning effort. In the race itself, it was looking like it was going to be going his way once again, remaining inside that top 5, top 6 area. But Van Dorn's race for me came undone under that full course yellow that turned into a full safety car, which is when he had to relinquish that second place back from Pascal Verline, wasn't it? So Van Dorn was in second, if I've got that right, and he had to relinquish the position back to Verline because he overtook under the safety car period, under the yellow flags, under the full course yellow, etc. And that, for me, that one position just seemed to really put pay to his race overall. I mean, in theory, it shouldn't matter, but for me, it looked like it did, because he was... From there, the restart didn't go really his way. He was shuffled back initially, then shuffled back a little bit more, and then he ended up behind the likes of the 2 ERTs, Lucas Di Grassi, ended up behind all of those, and was running around in that sort of like 9th, 8th area, and then Dan Tinum decided to spin Lucas Di Grassi round. Van Dorn got caught up in that and tumbled to the back of the pack. Had to pit for a nose as well, if I remember rightly, as a result, and then worked his way back up inside the points. So gets a solid points effort, and I don't want to take anything away from Van Dorn for that, because ultimately the reason why he's down here isn't necessarily his fault. It wasn't his fault that Dan Tinum spun Di Grassi out, and he got caught up in that as an effect. But at the same time, look at what Cassidy did, charging back through the pack. There's other drivers as well that have charged back through the pack from unfortunate positions. Ollie Rowland from P15, you know, so it's that to bear in mind. And Van Dorn, I've been finding excuses for him for a long time this season already. No time for that now. So Van Dorn's getting a solid 6. This is probably a harsh score, to be fair, based on how his race went due to no real fault of his own. But other drivers had a lot more misfortune, were able to recover the situation better. And that's ultimately why he's only getting 6 points. You know, it is a great points finish from where he was. But, yeah, other drivers did more. So, yeah, 6-2 Van Dorn. Next up, we come to Eduardo Moraira in the mighty Mahindra, qualifying himself in P1. P1! Who on earth thought of that? I certainly didn't. I couldn't believe it when I saw those qualifying results. I was like, my God, how's he done that? But credit where credit is due. Moraira has deserved this season. He has been so close to points. There's been moments where he's been inside the points in the latter stages of a race, then gets punted off and it doesn't go his way. Or the likes of Japan, where he crossed the line in P7, disqualified due to energy overuse. This time, qualified himself on pole, guaranteed the team 3 points. All he had to do was start from that position, and that is what he did. So that was 3 points on the board already for Mahindra, who have been pointless throughout the season. They really needed that. They really needed that. And here he comes home to secure 4 more points with a P8 finish, bringing their tally to 7, which is you know, let's be honest, you know, it's nothing really special, is it? They're still firmly last in the standings. Apt have got 19, I think it is. ERT on 23, so there's still a long way to go to try and close that gap, but they've got themselves off the board. They've proved that they've got a 1-lap pace, which we've seen from Moraira previously with some good, you know, dual qualifying battles. So he's done that, and this time he got pole position, which was a stunning effort, and rewarded the team with points in the end of the race as well, which means that the car has got the efficiency to get to the end inside the points. It just has to be in that position. So well done, Moraira. Really well done. Well chuffed for you for that. For Eduardo Moraira overall, I have awarded him 9 points. 9 points, and I think people will be thinking, well, why weren't you jumping up and down? And really thinking, well, why is it not a perfect 10? The only reason for that is I know I'm going to be really critical, but I do feel there could have been a little bit more out of that. When you see the likes of Van Dorn finishing ahead based on what happened to him, and also the likes of Grassi climbing through the field, Roland climbing through the field, we knew the Mahindra were always going to go backwards, but I just feel that Moraira maybe could have squeezed maybe a P6 out of this one, and yeah, I'm more than happy that he's been overcautious at times. You know, I think leading the race in the early stages maybe didn't pay very well for his energy, but they look quite happy to do that at the time. But yeah, 9 to Moraira. I don't want to take anything away from his weekend overall. It was just one of those things where I feel that maybe getting his elbows out just that little bit more could have given him just a couple more points. 9 to Moraira. Next up, we come to Sasha Fenestraz in the second of the Nissan. So double points for that Nissan squad. But once again, his teammates up there on the podium. Sasha Fenestraz just picking up a couple of points. We've seen this so much this season. Sasha, I highly rated him in a rookie year. This season, it's not gone all his own way. Sometimes it's been luck. But this time, it's been a bit of both again, hasn't it, to be fair? He was trying to move around the outside, one of the corners, one of the new complex sections that I can't really remember the circuit massively in my head how it goes. But it was towards like the middle phase of the lap, and he was on the outside, and he got squeezed, and he lost like a load of places there. He got wing damage as a result as well, but didn't have to pit. So yeah, unlucky in that scenario. He tumbled his way outside like from P8 to about P13, P14. Clambered his way back up to P9 to secure some points. But again, other drivers had a lot more misfortune this weekend and were able to recover the situation a lot better. So it's a harsh score for Fenestraz for me personally. But again, excuses are excuses. It happened up and down the field that some drivers had some bad luck at some stage. It's how you got on with it and recovered the situation. So it's going to be 5.5 to Fenestraz for me. Don't want to be overly harsh, but again, I can't really praise him. You know, he came from 16th on the grid, and he was still quite a way behind his teammate when the incident happened, where he got pushed wide, got a bit of wing damage. One of those things. It's racing at the end of the day. Secured a couple of points, which is respectable and decent, but it could have been more, and maybe should have been more as well. 5.5 to Sasha Fenestraz. Last of the point scorers, we come to Taylor Barnard in the McLaren. In only his second ever Formula E race, he picks up un point for that McLaren squad. What a fantastic effort by Taylor this weekend. Again, another driver that had mixed fortunes throughout that race. That race was quite literally a roller coaster for him. Qualified himself in P13, which is an incredible effort. Out-qualified his teammate Jake Hughes by 4 positions. So that is a stunning effort. The race itself, he was running around in that sort of P13, P14 area throughout most of it. Picked up wing damage earlier in the race and had to stop for a new nose, which was unfortunate. And then you think, well, that's that. He's at the back of the grid. But then was able to climb his way back up through the field again, and he was having some massive battles on that last lap, wasn't he? With the likes of Paul Aron, Jordan King was in there, there was the Kelvin Vandelinder, pretty much all the rookies, weren't there? All the rookies were in a gaggle, squabbling for these final points paying position. I think Sasha Fenestraz was in it as well, but was able to gap him on the last lap. And Taylor Barnard was ultimately the driver that came out on top of that gaggle to secure 1 point. And that is a great effort. That is a fantastic effort. I'm really, really pleased with him for that. Honestly, I don't think he could have done any more than what he did today. For a rookie in only his second race to be dealing with all that carnage, to have a front wing damage, to come through the field, you know, it's a great effort. It really, really is. Taylor Barnard, for that reason, is securing 9 points on the board for him. I think that's a fair score. Really, really well done to Taylor for that. Really impressed with him. I thoroughly enjoyed watching his wave carve through the field again. And yeah, okay, he had a wing damage, but a lot of cars did. But as we were mentioning, some drivers that with a lot more experience couldn't get that much further up the grid after sustaining the same amount of damage or not as much damage. So Taylor Barnard in only his second race. What an effort. What an achievement. 9 points to him. Just outside the points we come to Kelvin Vandelinder, the returning Kelvin Vandelinder, of course. Not quite a rookie, as I previously mentioned, talking about Taylor there. He did a few races, of course, last season, replacing Robin France after his wrist injury. But this time around, you know, he's come in, he's qualified P11, he's finished P11 in an app Cupra. And he sort of kept himself out of trouble as well, to be fair, didn't he? We didn't see him doing anything drastically wrong as far as I can remember. I don't think he's been, you know, messing around. I don't think he had to pit for a wing. I think he just picked his fights, picked his battles wisely. They're interviewing him before the start of the race and they're like, look, you know, you're one of the most experienced rookies to come in to replace just for this weekend. So how do you feel? He's like, well, it's surprising because when he raced last season, this whole peloton effect had not come into play in Formula E, despite it being the Gen 3 era, obviously when he raced last season. Yeah, the Gen 3 era didn't really monopolise the peloton until towards the latter half of the season last year. So for him, the peloton effect was a whole new thing because that was not something he was familiar with. So he adjusted to that. So he was a real rookie in that scenario, but was, of course, familiar with the Gen 3 car. I think qualifying P11 and finishing P11 on a return after like a year out, I think that's respectable. I think it really is. So I've scored him 8 points. 8 points to Kelvin Vandelinder. Really, really pleased with him for that. It's a shame he missed out on points, but then again, I'm happy for Taylor Barnard to secure the points himself. And let's see how he gets on in the second race. Maybe points possible there. It would be nice to see him score some points, because he did some good drives last season, but the app Cooper was even worse than it is now. So, yeah, the points weren't possible then when he was racing it, but now they are, and I hope they come his way. But yeah, a solid 8 to Vandelinder. Next up, we come to Jordan King, making his debut for the Mahindra squad in place of Nick De Vries. Qualified himself in P14 and finished the race here in P12. Another one that was lonely. There was all this damage, carnage, chaos, wings flying everywhere, cars stopping on track, accidents and bumps and scrapes. Jordan King kept himself out of all that trouble, and I think that is what Mahindra expected of him. That is what he delivered, and I don't think you can expect him to do anything more than that. I really don't. Okay, Moraira got pole position. Here he is in P14. But, you know, these rookies could have been quite easily lining up in last place, and we'd have still said, you know, respectable. But P14, I think, is a good effort for that Mahindra car. Really well done on a debut. And in the race itself, secured P12, as mentioned, fighting for the points there at the end, at the latter stages of that race. And more importantly, didn't write the car off, didn't bring it home battered and dragging a wheel under itself. Just was smart throughout, and that deserves praise. So for Jordan King, I've gone a solid 7 for him. I think that's a fair score, fair assessment for his overall race. Again, nothing special or spectacular, but kept it out the wall, and that is the main thing. That is the main thing he could do this weekend. So let's see how he carries on into the next race. But for now, it's a solid 7 to Jordan King. And next up, we come to another debutant. They're all coming in thick and fast now. It is Paul Aron in the Envision, I mean, the luckless Envision squad. It doesn't matter who they stick in it. Buemi, Frines, Paul Aron, Joel Erikson, makes no difference. The cars come home absolutely battered and wrecked and damaged, and unfortunately no points to go with it either. He tried a desperate late lunge on someone, didn't he? Was it Vandelinder or something into the final corner, and he ended up losing a load of places, and this is why he's here. And an unlucky for some P13. But yeah, you know, I think honestly, Paul Aron qualified himself, what was it, P18, P19, something like that. Wasn't overly great, was out-qualified by his teammate Joel Erikson. And in the race itself was looking like he was going to be out-raced by Joel as well. But got himself into the points at stages, but then had wing damage, and it was just all a bit of a mess, wasn't it? And then picked up a time penalty, but I don't think it affects his position, does it? Because of how far the other ones were back that pitted after the safety car for a wing. So, yeah, it's going to be 6.5 to Paul Aron. Don't want to discredit him too much. He's a rookie after all, but at the same time, there was other rookies that did a little bit more, that were a little bit more impressive for me personally. And, yeah, he did cause damage for Envision and didn't bring home any points, which is what they're used to. 6.5 to Paul Aron. And then we come to Dan Tinum. And there we have it. Lotterer of the week for Dan Tinum for taking out Lucas Di Grassi. Silly incident, was needless, and once again outqualified by his teammate and was being outshone by his teammate as well. And then he went and made a silly mistake again. This is going to be his third lotterer now, which is going to be a final warning for me. A final warning. If he does anything else silly, stupid, anything, he's out of here. I'm going to disqualify him because I can't keep doing this. I can't keep giving him, lotterers of the weeks just for the fun of it. He's had 3, he's had his chances, he's received a lot of low scores from me this season. There's only been 1 racer praise so far. This is really, really weird. As daft as it sounds, it's almost like Sergio Sette Camera is Dan Tinum and Dan Tinum is Sergio Sette Camera. Based on what those drivers were doing last season, the pair of them, it is a real reversal in fortune for each of them. And Dan Tinum is causing all his own dramas and troubles. He really is. It cost his teammate as well this weekend. It's just not acceptable. So yeah, a lotterer of the week to Dan Tinum. Really, really needs to book his ideas up now because he's treading on eggshells with me. Any more silly behaviour, any more poor pace, poor qualifying, poor racing, he's out of here. It's as simple as that and will become the first disqualification as well. So yeah, Dan Tinum, lotterer of the week to him. Finishing just behind Dan Tinum, we come to Jake Hughes. And there we have it, a lotterer of the week to Jake Hughes as well. I think that's his second consecutive one, is it? Oh dear, I know he's on 2 anyway, but oh my god, Jake. What's happened to you this season, man? What has happened? I can't believe it. I honestly cannot believe it. Where's he gone? Where's he gone? Qualified P17, out-qualified by Taylor Barnard. That's not good. And in the race itself, wing damage. I think he had to pit twice for a nose, didn't he? Either way, it was awful. It was just awful. It was just nothing there to really talk about, to rate about. I'm pretty sure he pitted twice for a nose. If not, I think he crashed one nose, pitted, and then broke the other one as well. I think that's how it went, didn't it? It didn't go well either way. But yeah, unfortunately for Jake Hughes, we're here all alone. And yeah, very, very disappointing. Oh dear, oh dear. Lotterer of the week to Jake Hughes. Next up, we come to Sergio Sette Camera in the second of the ERTs, the ERTs. And yeah, what could be said for Sette Camera after qualifying himself in a solid P4 effort? The race itself, I don't know. It looked to be unravelling rather rapidly for him, to be honest, didn't it? He was sort of on the fringes of the points early on. He'd already lost a few places. After the full course yellow that turned into a safety car, I think it was about 8th or 9th or maybe even 10th. But he got his teammate just ahead of him at that point based on how the attack modes fell for each driver, I think. And then he was on the inside at the hairpin. Dan Tinum was ahead of him at the hairpin, and so was Di Grassi. And unfortunately, Dan Tinum decided he was just going to tip Di Grassi into a spin, and that affected Sergio Sette Camera because he ploughed into the back of his teammate as a result of him spinning Di Grassi round. The same happened for Stuffle Van Den Berg behind as well, of course. It was a bit of a domino effect, and Dan Tinum really cost his teammate at that situation and at that point because both cars were damaged. Sette Camera, I believe, had to come in for a wing. And to be honest, I could have said that for every driver, couldn't I? Because it was that chaotic. And then in the race, that was it. Then it was job done, unfortunately for him, and all he could pick up was this. So I've given him 4. 4 for Sette Camera. That's probably really harsh, to be fair. It wasn't his fault that he went this wrong. I'd have just liked to have seen him maybe higher up the pack, as mentioned. Stay in that top 6 area, you tend to be safe. Anything lower than that, you're in the danger zone. He fell outside that and into that danger zone for me personally, and that's where I think it all went wrong. But yeah, 4 to Sette Camera. It is harsh, I'll admit it, but ERT promised quite a bit this weekend with Sette Camera, and it didn't happen in race 1. Let's see what happens in race 2, but for now, 4 to Sette Camera. Next up, we come to the first of the Maseratis, Jahan Daruvala. And there we have it, a Lotterer of the week to Jahan Daruvala, unfortunately for, well, he just really missed his breaking point, didn't he, at the hairpin? He totally misjudged how slow Mortara was going to go around that hairpin, and he just absolutely harpooned him into the back of Mortara, took his own front wing off, had to pit for a wing, and that was it, race over for him, when he was looking like he was going to be finishing around the 7th place area, which was going to be a mighty, mighty impressive performance for him, considering he was... you know, starting last, he got a 20 place grid drop anyway. I can't quite remember where he'd actually qualified, but it didn't matter. And he had to serve a 10-second stop go in the race as well. So none of that was his doing, none of that was his fault. He was starting at the back anyway, and he was going to be, of course, serving a 10-second time penalty when he couldn't serve the whole penalty in qualifying. So yeah, that was one of those things, unfortunately. That was that. So did that, and then looked to be like nowhere, but then saving energy. Got himself inside that top 10, and then, as mentioned, just totally misjudged how the other ones were slowing down, managing energy, and not wanting to lead at that phase, and just absolutely ploughed into the back of Mortara. He was lucky Mortara, of course, had damage, but didn't have retirement-worthy damage, because that was a hefty whack, that. Jahan Daruvala, unfortunately, Lotterer of the week to him. A lot of rookies finished ahead of him that have literally done no races, or one race, or maybe just a couple of races. He's had half a season now, and that was a really, really, really big rookie error. So yeah, unfortunately, Lotterer of the week to Jahan Daruvala. I was hoping points were going to be possible there, and it looked like they were, but he threw it all away. Then we come to Norman Natto in the Andretti. What a disastrous race for Andretti, this race. Unbelievable. Their one-lap pace is disgusting. That's the only word I can use. It is absolutely atrocious. Qualifying on the back row of the grid, Jahan Daruvala's penalty saves them the embarrassment of locking out the back row. They were 22 and 21. Unbelievable. So yeah, I don't blame Natto for that at all. The race itself, they were managing their efficiency really well at the back. You could see them. They were not keeping involved in anything. They were just at the back, harvesting energy. And it looked to be paying off. It certainly looked to be paying off more for Jake Dennis, but we'll come to him in a moment. But for Norman Natto, he was mainly at the back of the pack anyway. Then started to try and make his way through the field, and then picked up a puncture. What can you do? What can you do? If your race is not with you, it's not with you. So although he's not an official retirement, I am treating him as one. He's getting a middle row 5. Middle row 5 for Norman Natto for me personally. I don't think he could have done much more. He was in a massively compromised position due to the lack of one-lap pace that the Andretti has got. And then in the race itself, didn't make the progress he maybe should have been making. And then when he was trying to catch up and trying to finally attack, picked up an unlucky puncture. And that was that. 5 to Norman Natto. Then we do come to the official list of retirements. And the first one on this list, the last to retire in the race, is of course Jake Dennis, Norman Natto's teammate, and yeah, for him, qualified in P21, elevated to a magnificent P20 with Daruvala's penalty. Unbelievable. That one-lap place is disgusting. Got himself up inside that top 5 area though, didn't he? He got himself into that spot where you think, right, he's going to get points, he's going to do a Cassidy here, recover the situation well, points, podium may be possible here. And unfortunately, he locked up at the hairpin, and it got a bit squirrely and came to virtually a dead stop, which caused a bit of a concertina effect behind, and kept going. But we later found out, I thought it was that mistake that caused the puncture. No, he went into that hairpin, unfortunately, with a deflating tyre, which is why he locked up, which is why he ended up coming to a stop and everything. It was the puncture that did it. Yeah, unfortunately, a front left puncture. There was that much carbon fibre littered all over the track. It was just unfortunate, wasn't it? So yeah, Jake Dennis, what a shame. What a shame. Points were possible there. He was inside the top 5 at the time it happened. But again, just luck wasn't on his side. A middle row 5 to Jake Dennis for that. Hope tomorrow's better for him, but fucking hell, Andretti need to get that one-lap pace together. Next up, we come to Maxi Gunz in the second of the Maseratis. What a shame for Maxi Gunz. You know, we've talked about all this wing damage, some having to pit for wings, some having wing damage but able to continue with the damage they had. He just made a slight tap on the car ahead of him. just coming over the start-finish line, or the old start-finish line, wasn't it? He just made a slight touch, just a slight touch, and the wing immediately folded under his front wheel, so he couldn't steer, and he just went barrel rolling off into the wall, and that was it. Took Jake Hughes with him as well, which was unfortunate for Jake. But yeah, like, just how unlucky can you be? You know, there's all that carnage and chaos and wings and everything flying about the place. There's cars getting spun round, suspension damage, etc. You slightly touched the car ahead just as you misjudged him accelerating out of the corner, which is fair enough when you're trying to harvest energy and you're in the pack. Tags the back of the car, wheels fold under, into the wall he goes. Big shame, big shame. So I don't hold that against him at all, I don't. He was inside that top 6 area. He was looking like it was going to be on for some solid points once again. Podium may have been possible, but I think a bit unlikely because he was a little bit down on energy compared to others. But it's a Miller 05 to Maxi Gunz. I don't want to hold that against him for the wing folding underneath because that is just unlucky. But there we go. That's life, isn't it? 5 to Maxi Gunz. Then we come to Lucas Di Grassi in the second of the apps, and as already mentioned, taken out by Dan Tinum. That's a shame. That's a shame. We noticed that Lucas Di Grassi has been a bit of a shunter this season. He's been the one that's been causing the damage, been causing the collisions, been causing the contact with a lot of other cars. And I have ridiculed him for that, and I have rightly put him in his place for that. But this race wasn't his fault. Qualified himself in P7, the first time he's been in top 10 this season, so that was a good effort. And then in the race itself was running inside the points and was spun around by Dan Tinum, given damage, and then he ended up, I think he carried on for a little bit and then retired ultimately. So yeah, big shame for Lucas Di Grassi. Again, as a retirement, maximum can score is 5, and that's what he's going to get. That's probably one of his best scores he's had all season. But yeah, 5 to him. That actually wasn't his fault this weekend. He got his elbows out when he needed to, but that was part of the frenetic racing that was happening in the pack. Didn't deserve to get spun out like that though. Apt probably could have scraped a couple of points there with Di Grassi. So yeah, 5 to Lucas Di Grassi. And then last but by no means least, we come to Joel Erikson in the Envision. What a debut he had. He qualified quite respectably, to be honest. Out-qualified his teammate Paul Aron. In the race itself was on the fringes of the points, and then we just saw that the suspension was broken. Now there wasn't any like wall marking on the actual outer edge of the rim of the suspension that was broken, so it doesn't indicate that he hit a wall. Did he hit a curb a little bit too hard? He possibly could have done, but unfortunately his race was over. He did have wing damage as well. He'd already made contact with someone else for that, so yeah, Envision absolutely loving their parts bill this season. But yeah, Joel Erikson can't really be held responsible for the damage that he sustained. Even though he probably did strike a curb a little bit too hard, it could have easily been suspension failure caused by debris on the racetrack. It could have been anything. So it could have just been a component failure. It could have been a lot. Those Envision cars have been through a lot these last few races, so nothing would surprise me. Joel Erikson is going to get 3 out of the maximum of 5 he can score as a retirement. I do need to knock a couple of points off because it probably was a self-inflicted damage. But I don't want to lay blame on him too much, and I hope the second race comes good for him. So then guys, those were the runners and riders of the Berlin E-Prix. Let me know your thoughts and feedback down below. Did I score any drivers too high, any too low? The updated standings with the scores I've just awarded are on the screen now for you to take a look at. It's an absolute mess, I do apologise, but everything will be rectified once again after the season closes, of course, after this weekend closes, I should say, where the regular drivers will be put back into their rightful position on the scoreboard, and these substitutes will be removed, unfortunately. But I will keep a track of their score, so at the end of the season I'll let you know where they all ended up. But as always, a massive thanks goes out to Dan of Mushy Gaming, formerly of Mushy Gaming of course, for providing me with the scoreboard that you see on your screen. Without him, this series would be more pointless than it already is. So I will see you guys tomorrow for the second race. I'm looking forward to that. I actually genuinely haven't seen that race yet, so that's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to that. I've heard of some results already, but not all of them, so we'll find out how it goes. But apparently it's just as chaotic as this one, so yeah, should be interesting. Thanks a lot for watching, guys, and as always, much love.